You know, I guess I'd title this teaching, Life is Short, Make Plans. Because our life really is short. And I admit that when we're in life day to day, you know, in the troubles, the tribulations, the pressures of life day to day, sometimes life can seem long, but in relation to the span of time and when we look back upon the years we've lived, you know, our life really is short. And that's something important that we need to take a hold of, because we do need to make plans and make the most of our life. I had a very visceral experience with this just last week. I had a funeral of a family member, and my wife and I had to drive from Bloomington, Indiana down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and then Asheville, North Carolina. And we stopped halfway at my mother-in-law's house to spend a day with her. And we stopped, so she lives in Huntington, West Virginia. We stopped there, and we ended up going to the Huntington Museum of Art. And we went to the museum shop. And in the museum shop, one of the things they were selling was hourglasses. And I love timepieces and time, and I grabbed the hourglass. And interestingly enough, this is one I borrowed. I didn't buy one. But interestingly enough, the museum shop hourglass, some of them had green sand, just like this hourglass has. And I looked at the hourglass, and I turned the hourglass, and I kind of goofed around with it a little bit and thought about the passage of time. And then, you know, you set it down and you move on, and you don't really think about it. It's like, okay, our lives kind of move on. Then the next day, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, preparing for this funeral, and it was a cremation. And because it was a close relative, then we got the cremated remains from the crematorium, and they came in a little cardboard box. It was a hard-pressed cardboard. And we had to take the ashes out of the box and put them in the urn. And the ashes came, yeah, in a box, but in a plastic bag. And it was a thin plastic bag, just kind of a thin, sort of like you'd get if you got your groceries at a grocery store. You know, hard plastic in a sense, but very thin. And as I lifted the ashes out of this cardboard box to put them in the urn that would be placed in the mausoleum, the plastic bag had a little pinhole in it. And the ashes started to pour out just exactly the same way the day before the sand had poured out of the hourglass. And it was just such a visceral experience of, wow, this was somebody's life that now is basically dust to dust and ashes to ashes. It's basically sand. And here this bag has a little pinhole leak, and their life just pouring out onto the counter. And I thought, man, that is so true of us and our lives. We have a limited amount of time, and then it runs out. Just like the sand in the hourglass, it's going to be gone. And we want to look back and make sure that we've done our best for God. And in order to do that, we're going to have to plan. Because you and I both know that if you don't plan what's going to happen in a day, the next thing you know, half the day is gone, and you didn't get anything redemptive done. Maybe you didn't read the Bible. Maybe you didn't pray. Maybe you didn't call somebody you needed to call. Maybe you didn't relax when you needed to relax. But if we don't plan, so many times the time is just almost stolen from us. You know, the Bible has so much to say about the day of our death and planning for it. Here in Ecclesiastes chapter 8, starting in verse 6, and I'm reading out of the Revised English Version. For there is a proper time and procedure for every purpose, even though the misery of man is heavy on him. Now, why does it say there's a proper time for every procedure and every purpose, even though the misery of man is heavy on him? You know, a lot of times, because life is tough, life is difficult, we're so tempted to cheat or to fudge or to not do things in the moral way or the godly way, because life is so difficult. And if we just cheat a little, things will be easier. And yet the Bible is very clear that we aren't crowned unless we fight our fight in a godly way. So he says, you know, there's a proper time and procedure, and there really is. And then verse 7 says, for no one knows what will happen, for because who can tell him when it will happen? I know I'm going to die, but who's going to tell me when? Verse 8, there's no man who has power over the Spirit to retain the Spirit, and no one has power over the day of his death. Yeah, we don't know. We know we've got this limited amount of time. That's what we've got. We've got our limited amount of time. And what we want to do is make absolutely the most of it. And that means we need to plan. You know, the Bible makes it clear that we can, that when mankind dies, what's happened is we've come to the end of our life. This is Matthew chapter 2:19, and I'm reading out of the REV, and it says, "Now after Herod had come to the end of his life, look, an angel of Yahweh appeared in a dream to Joseph." Now, most English versions say, "Now when Herod had died." But the Greek word is different. The Greek word is teleutao, and telos is the end. It's not the standard word for death here, that now when Herod had died. It's Herod had come to the end. Herod's time had run out. And all of our times will run out. During Herod's life, he had as much opportunity as the next guy to be godly, to obey God. But he, in his case, decided not to. But then he ran out of opportunities to change his mind. He had come to the end. His time had run out. And that will happen for all of us. And we don't want to come to the end and leave things undone that we would have rather done. So we need to plan. Thus, Ephesians 5:16 says, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. Now, the word here in the Greek can mean to redeem or to make the best use of. And in this particular instance, although, for example, the King James Version says redeem the time, you and I know, once time is gone, you can't buy it back. You can't redeem it. It's gone. So this verse is not about buying back time. This verse is about making the best use of our time. So it's literally making the best use of the time because the days are evil. But how are we going to do that? How are we going to make the best use of our time? And the answer is we're going to plan. You know, if you want to fellowship with other people, you've got to plan. If you want to make important phone calls, you've got to plan. If you want to have time to read your Bible regularly, you're going to have to plan. You've got to make a plan and put those things in place. Now, does every time we plan, do our plans happen? No, all kinds of things come up that kind of modify, change, destroy our plans. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't plan. So, here's the verse. Make the best use of the time. That's what God says to do. Our time is limited. Our challenge is to make the best use of it. What does that mean to you and me? It means we have to sit down when we've got some time to think and say, these are the things I want to get done. And then we've got a plan to get them done. And then we've got to be aggressive about getting them done. And we've got to set boundaries. So I challenge you, if you want to make the best use of your time, take time to plan and then be aggressive in carrying out your plan. Thanks so much for watching this video. Hope you found it helpful and a blessing. If you would like to contribute to the effort of producing these videos and having them go out all over the world, please consider donating at stfonline.org/donate. And while you're thinking about things, don't forget to push the subscribe button at the bottom of the screen so you get notified of future videos. God bless.